Welcome to Unpatch at Cybersync Infosecurity 2025. I am sitting here with some distinguished guests, and we're going to talk about something interesting. We're going to talk about what's the difference between security and compliance? Or is there a difference? Let's figure out. Who are you? And tell me more about you.
Sure. So my name is Goa Mohammed. I'm the Group Head of Information Security at a company called L&Q. I've been working in information security and cyber for over 17 years. Cover all things information and cybersecurity. Enjoy what I do, and techie at heart. So love these types of conversations.
Lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I'm Joseph Ross. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, and we support small businesses all around the southwest of England to take responsibility for their own cyber resilience and take the next step. And this conversation is really pertinent to that, because the next step that we want small businesses to be focusing on is looking at cyber essentials, which is that level of compliance, which we're going to dive into in more detail now.
Fantastic. Very good to have you here. My name is Hedrick Kinstedt. I head up a management consultancy called Kinstedt Limited, my short name. I also are the Chief Revenue Officer of a cybersecurity vendor called Coolspan. I am also in the capacity here as 30 odd years in cybersecurity. So let's see what we can do with
Lots of experience.
we're sitting with the experts here. So let's see. All right. Are we compliant? Or does that mean we are secure?
I love this question. We were discussing earlier that I think we talk about compliance and security. This is a question we ask our interviewees, people that are interviewing for a role. And I think, the answer is compliance is great. And a lot of organizations have to be compliant to a standard, whether it's due to regulation, whether it's because of the industry they're in. So we've seen DORA and ISO 27001 and all of that kind of stuff. But I think security is more paramount, because actually the frameworks are great, but actually being secure doesn't, the frameworks don't always cover every aspect of being secure. So while they are intrinsically tied together, they are inherently two different things, which I think is really, really important. So in order to be secure, it's good to be compliant to help you be secure, but it doesn't mean you're secure if you're compliant, is my very quick answer initially.
And great answer. I mean, there's a checkbox exercise here to be done.
Yes, correct.
And then you have to live after that checkbox exercise. How do you see that? Is it sort of, I guess it's what happens in between the audit and there.
I mean, that's the danger, right? So a lot of the time we have auditors come in and they tell you this is the gaps, this is what you need to do to get to ISO or Cyber Essentials or NIST or whatever. Well, NIST is more of a framework that you don't get audited against all the time. However, it's really about ensuring that you're proactive. And unfortunately, compliance doesn't give you that proactivity that necessarily you get from just a maturity model where you're trying to go on a journey. So being secure is about trying to do that frequently, more regularly. Some compliance is more frequent, other compliance is annual. And I think Sarbanes-Oxley is more quarterly versus ISO 27000, which is 27001, which is annual. And I think that's the gap. And having a good security mindset means that you're doing it more proactively throughout the year. So for me, that's a really important part of it.
No, for sure.
When we're speaking to an organisation that isn't mature in this space, they don't have security as a priority, compliance is a really good first step, because we can say, look, you're here now and you've got a long way to go to meet this requirement. And as long as we pitch that compliance as a minimum standard to achieve, say, look, that's where everyone else is performing, there or above, and you're down here, look, you need to get compliant. On that side, it's really useful. But also having knowledge of your supply chain, and meaning that you can take responsibility for who you work with, that compliance gives those people a badge to say, look, I am compliant, I'm holding this level of credibility, and you can then say and mandate within your procurement chains, look, if you're not Cyber Essentials or above, we can't work with you because you're just not taking it seriously. And then that allows organizations to be a bit more proactive with how they protect their supply chain, not just themselves looking within.
Yeah, I think it's having that fundamental. I think what you're saying it makes lots of sense, because it's about having a fundamental guardrails or guidelines that you adhere to. And I think Otherwise, you can go off in lots of different directions. So having something that you align to is important. It keeps you whole in terms of where you want to get to.
Sort of basic cyber hygiene.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you that kind of framework. It's like it is a framework for a reason. It gives like I don't know, if you take a religious book, for example, or you take an instruction manual, it tells you how you should do stuff. It doesn't mean you have to stick to it the whole way, but it gives you the fundamentals of what you need to do. After that, then you can guide that as you go. And I think compliance gives you that fundamental what you should do. After that, then it becomes more about the security. How do you enhance upon what you already have? And I think that, it's like when you have a car, it's nice to have a car that does the job, takes you A to B. After that, you might decide you've got a really nice car, you want to take it on a track day. That's not within the instruction manual per se, but there's a different set of guidelines that you'd follow. And I think that's where it branches out. Weird analogy, but you kind of get my point.
I get the feeling sometimes that we get more and more compliance frameworks. At what point does it take away from the actual security work versus being compliant? Is there a balance here?
So compliance has to change a lot because with the way threat actors work, they're not going to disappear once everyone becomes compliant. So if we take the analogy to a different type of crime of burglary, they'll go after the weakest link. They'll walk up a street and find out. They'll take notes. Who is the weakest target? Who am I going to go after? It's exactly the same in cyber. If you're stronger than your neighbours, then they're probably going to go after the neighbour rather than you. But what we're trying to do in the Cyber Resilience Centre is get everybody up to the Cyber Essentials standard,
Yes.
which then is going to move everybody up to that level. If the worst business in the Southwest for cyber is at Cyber Essentials, then the attackers are just going to go for people that are doing the basics, and it will be more sophisticated attacks, and they'll be targeting more sophisticated people. So then the next level of compliance will be actually Cyber Essentials isn't enough because now you've all got it. That if you've only got Cyber Essentials, you're the target.
But
it moves the goalpost.
It speaks to this sort of old-fashioned security, villas and alarms on villas.
Yeah.
If there's likely that they have an alarm, you go to the next house.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that also go with compliance then? If you know someone is compliant and someone is not, is that the alarm or is it not for an attacker?
It could well be, and I guess the next stage is what level of compliance you've got. If you've only got Cyber Essentials, but someone else has 27,001, they're going to say, well, they've actually put a lot more time and effort and work in to achieve that level of compliance
That might be trickier.
over the Cyber Essentials, so they've put more.
Do you think it would work like that, or
It could well be.
I'm not sure.
It's a tricky one. I think you made a really good point. There's a lot of compliance standards, and I think the danger we've got is with all the different standards, we're trying to chase the standard rather than ensuring that we're protecting security. So an example is you would do vetting on your staff. That's ISO 27001, making sure that you got security when you vet your staff prior to onboarding them onto different areas of your business. The reality, though, is if you're just ticking that box, you could still be hiring people that aren't very good, or they've got a criminal background, or there's a conflict of interest. And I think this is the bit where the balance between the two is really important, because if there's enough of a risk, and this is a really important point, risk to your organization, you should focus on the risk rather than the compliance, because ultimately what's going to happen if you're meeting compliance but you get breached, the investors are still going to be asking you the same question, which is what the hell happened and why are we in this place? Whereas if you're meeting your risk level and making sure you're mitigating those risks, you're then in a place where you say, we did what we could.
I want to salute you on that. I mean, I come from a vendor world where in essence, the reasons why you don't want to be compliant. So in essence, in the vendor world, some vendors want to be compliant because they want to actually increase the security posture. I would say that's a great reason. Other wants to be getting that compliance network because they want to win that deal. They have no interest actually to increase the security posture. It's a match because this and that customer require that compliance for you to deliver to them. That's a bad reason because you're not actually going to make an effort then, are you?
Yeah. And then lots of these standards, or at least some of these standards, don't require an external auditor. So for the basic Cyber Essentials certification, you complete that yourself. Now, if you're not an IT expert or if you're less than ethical, you might bend the truth to pass that audit, that form that you're filling out. Then you get a pass, then you get your Cyber Essentials for a year. Congratulations, you're able to go in all these contracts. But actually, you haven't met the standard in the first place, you've just got the badge. So if you don't have that external auditor, how can you justify?
I can give you a live example. FIPS certification. It's a certification. You can get FIPS certificate, but you can also be compliant. And the wording for a customer, they wouldn't necessarily distinguish between them. They say, oh, so that organization is compliant,
Yep.
and that is certified.
So it's really interesting you mentioned that. So I'm not going to mention names, but to your point, you have lots of organizations you hear about, which is we've scoped ISO 27000 for this portion of the business. So the business technically is ISO 27001. The whole business is not. And that's unfortunate. And they're trying to get on top of that. I mean, they're trying to stop that from happening. But the reality is that's gaming the system to try and make the sale. And that's unethically, that's unethical in so many ways. The other thing that, and I was corrected on this after doing a talk, was we talk about the basics a lot. And I think we need to move away from the word basics to fundamentals. Because if it was basic, everyone would do it. And it's not the reality. It's about the fundamental. So I created a part of my talks. I created a 5 steps to resilience. And that's about getting one of them is about getting the basics right, which I was corrected, so it should be fundamentals, which is about patch management, for instance, right? So Cyber Essentials, you need to patch within 14 days without fail across your environment. It sounds like a basic thing, but it's a fundamental thing, which is very hard to do for anyone who's tried to do patching within 14 days. In the real world, it's very difficult compared to the hypothetical. We can just put a patch out there because it breaks, so potentially it affects other things. So,
And I think on that point of basics and fundamentals, I mean, there are certain bits, what is a strong password, which if we say it's the basic, and I speak to businesses all the time, it's my day job to go out and speak to businesses and raise awareness. When I speak to business and say, what do you think a good password is? They can tell me. They can list all of the things pretty much as the NCSC describes what makes a good password. And then if you ask them what their password is, hopefully they don't tell you. But if they do, they'll say it's their cat's name followed by 1, and it's the same on everything. They know what they should be doing, but they're not investing the time to actually do it. And I think that's a key thing with cyber hygiene. For most of the fundamentals, if you list them out and say what do you think the right policy is for X, Y, and Z, it's common sense. We know that they know what the answer is. Are they doing it? No, most of the time.
it's true, but that's the thing, right? And this is going back to the original point around compliance versus security. There's so many assumptions that are made with this stuff, right? Oh, this is an easy thing to do. Oh, we can do this thing by doing this thing. The reality is, and this is for any organization, we talk about resilience a lot, but the conversation is not about security, about resilience. The bottom line is we have to make sure that we understand our gaps and address those first, because our ultimate goal, we talk about security and compliance. Our ultimate goal is to make sure the business can operate, do its job, and not be impacted by an incident. That's our fundamental thing that we need to do. And it doesn't have to be a cyber incident. It could be just a general incident. Ultimately, the business wants to know, can we continue to operate? And we missed the point.
How long for?
Yeah, and how long for, and how much money we're losing, and how do we reduce that likelihood? That's ultimately what we're there for. We get caught up in all of this stuff.
So, just a bit of a provocative question. Can a company, for example, pass ISO 27001, audit all, and still be, in essence, a not very secure company?
I think so. I think, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's about the essence and the spirit of why you're doing it. If the spirit is to get compliance so you can sell and, tick a box, I think then you're treading on dangerous ground. I'm not saying that you will get breached. Hopefully you won't. And chances are you're getting a lot of fundamental things right. However, you could still have gaps, which is really about having the right team that's saying, we're doing this stuff. However, we've got to think about these things as well. So, threat hunting is not a requirement from a compliance standpoint, but it's so valuable in telling you what your organization looks like. So yeah, if you're not doing threat hunting, you're still compliant, but you could be missing things completely by not doing that. So that's just one example of.
No, I completely agree. I mean, if you do it as a checkbox exercise, and that's it, and you do whatever it takes, there will be some gaps for sure.
Building on your example from earlier, if you've got an organization which has a department which has done ISO 27001, but the rest of the organization or the sister companies or the group isn't, then you've got to go with the element of that organization which is the worst level of compliance, not the best.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you can't say, well, that person's got, or that department's got 27001, that sister company has it, so we're fine, we can push all the contracts through them, because then the organization is still at the worst speed, not the best speed.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen organizations firsthand and through conversations where, to meet compliance, you will, I've got to use my words really carefully here, where you meet compliance by making sure you've got the right evidence available.
How do you tick the box?
Right? Which is again, so this might be a process around starters, joiners, movers, leavers, right? And I've seen where you will create some documents to make sure that you can show that, or you pick certain ones. That's compliant.
And lots of it as company culture, isn't it?
As company culture, right?
And what's on paper.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the danger, right? So that's all fair and well, but again, you're missing the point. And I think companies are missing the point because it's short-termism. It's to meet that so you can operate, when actually the spirit should always be, we are doing a job for someone, and ethically we should do that in the best possible way. And I think that's really important.
I think you're onto something. I mean, I've seen organizations that they started on the journey to get ISO compliance. For example, in the beginning of the journey, it was a tick box exercise, but it actually woke up some thoughts. And in that journey, they said, oh, actually, the risk analysis here showcases that this is not good. We should actually care.
Yeah.
So even if I want to talk about this forever, I think we're coming to the end. But I want to finish with one question for you. If you could communicate the gap between compliance and security to leaderships in different organizations, what would you want to tell them?
That's an interesting question. I would say that my job, and this is part of what I do anyway, which is to give the right facts and the right information to leadership, and to say that this is compliance, this is security, and this is where we should be. I'm always there to not tell, but steer. I'm there to guide and advise and consult. Ultimately, the business will make a decision. However, my job, ethically as a leader in cybersecurity and information security, is to present the facts to make a risk-based decision. And I will say this is what we should do and this is what we shouldn't do. So not being the house of no and yes, but being more the house of should and shouldn't. And from that, making it tangible and real for them to say, if you do this thing, it's going to help us with this thing. If you don't do this thing, it could lead to this thing. And ultimately, if I'm in a good position, they'll listen to what I have to say and they'll do it. If I'm not doing my job well, then they may argue against it. But the goal is I'm there to present the facts based on real life and not something I made up, not to create FUD, so fear, uncertainty, and all of that kind of stuff. But it's really my job is to make sure they're informed, and then they will make the decision, because these things cost money and time. If they don't have money and time, I'm not there to say, here you go, here's £1 million. They're the ones that tell me we've got £1 million to spend on, or whatever that is. So that's, for me, is there to steer it. And I think when that conversation happens in the right way, you end up in the right place, and the best place you can be.
That makes sense.
If you have a job applicant and a job description, and then you compare those and work out whether that candidate meets that requirement, at the end of the day, you have a tick box of the compliance. Is that person compliant for that role? You're not then going to turn around and give them the job because they're compliant for the role. You need to go and meet them, find out more about them. That I think it's a bit of an analogy for compliance and security.
Yeah.
You won't employ someone purely based on compliance. You need to go and meet them and do that extra level of due diligence and find out what do they care about, what are they passionate about, why are they there. Then you can really dig into whether they're suitable and whether it's appropriate.
There's a real and aspirational element. It's making sure that you got the right, the balance between both.
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me. I mean, compliance can be the baseline, but security is a bit more. So there's nothing wrong to have that baseline, but security is about more than compliance. So I think we can agree on that.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Joseph,
Pleasure.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.